Hello and welcome to the Mindful Zone. My name is Your Name, and I'm so glad you've joined me today for what promises to be a transformative exploration of one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism, the concept of Anatta or not self. This teaching has the potential to challenge everything you think you know about who you are, and yet, paradoxically, it can also bring immense peace and clarity to your life. Now, before we dive in, let me assure you that this isn't going to be some dry philosophical lecture. Instead, we're going to approach Anatta in a way that's warm, accessible, and deeply practical. Whether you're brand new to mindfulness or someone who's been practicing meditation for years, there's something here for everyone. And if you're watching this because you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or just curious about how to live with more ease and joy, then you're in exactly the right place. So why focus on Anatta? Well, at its core, Anatta invites us to question one of the most fundamental assumptions we carry through life, that there's a solid, unchanging self at the center of our existence. Think about it for a moment. When you say the word, what do you mean? Are you referring to your body, your thoughts, your emotions, or perhaps something deeper like your soul or essence? Most of us go through life assuming that this I is real, fixed, and separate from everything else. But what if it's not? What if the self, as we understand it, is more like a story, one that we tell ourselves over and over again? In Buddhism, Anatta suggests that what we call the self is actually made up of constantly changing elements. It's like a river, always flowing, never staying the same from one moment to the next. Our bodies change, our thoughts shift, our emotions rise and fall, and yet we cling to the idea that there's some unchanging core within us. This attachment to the notion of a permanent self is seen as one of the root causes of suffering in Buddhist philosophy. Why? Because when things inevitably change, and they always do, we resist, we struggle, and we suffer. But here's the good news. Understanding Anatta doesn't have to leave you feeling lost or empty. In fact, quite the opposite. By letting go of the need to hold on to a rigid sense of self, you open yourself up to a deeper connection with life itself. You begin to see that you're part of something much larger, a vast web of interconnectedness that includes all beings, all moments, all experiences, and this realization can be incredibly freeing. Over the next 2 hours, we'll unpack the meaning of Anatta, explore its implications for your daily life, and offer practical tools like meditation and mindfulness practices to help you integrate these insights into your everyday routine. Along the way, we'll touch on questions like, how does Anatta relate to stress and anxiety? Can it improve your relationships? And how can you use this teaching to cultivate greater well-being and resilience? So, take a deep breath, settle into a comfortable position, and allow yourself to be fully present for this journey. There's no need to rush or try to figure everything out right away. Just let the words wash over you and trust that whatever resonates will stay with you long after this video ends. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking this step toward greater self-awareness and peace. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. What is Anatta? Let's start by diving deeply into the heart of what Anatta truly means, because understanding this concept is foundational to everything else we'll explore today. The word Anatta comes from Pali, one of the ancient languages of Buddhism, and it translates most commonly as not self or non-self. At first glance, this might sound strange or even unsettling to those encountering it for the first time. After all, much of our lives are built around the idea that there's a solid, enduring self at the center of our experience. We wake up each morning with the assumption that I am the same person who went to bed last night. But when we really examine this belief closely, cracks begin to appear in its foundation. To understand Anatta, let's take a step back and consider how we typically define ourselves. When you think about your identity, your sense of who you are, what comes to mind? For many people, their self-concept includes things like their body, their personality, their memories, their roles, like being a parent, a friend, or an employee, and even their emotions or thoughts. These elements seem to form a cohesive whole, a stable entity we call me. But here's where Buddhism challenges us to look deeper. Are these components of self actually fixed and permanent, or are they more fluid and impermanent than we realize? Take your body, for example. Your physical form is constantly changing. Cells die and regenerate. You grow older. Even over the course of a single day, your energy levels fluctuate, your mood shifts, and your appearance may change subtly depending on factors like hydration, sleep, or stress. If your body is always in flux, can it really be said to represent a permanent self? Now consider your thoughts. Have you ever noticed how unpredictable they are? One moment you're planning dinner, the next you're replaying an old conversation in your head. Thoughts arise, unbidden, linger briefly, and then disappear, often without any conscious effort on your part. They're like clouds drifting across the sky, here one moment, gone the next. And yet, despite their transient nature, we so often identify with them. We say things like, "I'm angry" or "I'm happy," as though these fleeting mental states define us. But do they? The same goes for emotions. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed by sadness or joy. Did that emotion stay forever? Of course not. It passed. Just like every other feeling you've ever experienced. Emotions are temporary visitors, arising in response to specific conditions and then fading away when those conditions change. And what about your roles and labels? Imagine someone who identifies strongly as a successful business person. What happens if they lose their job? Does that mean their entire sense of self crumbles overnight? Or consider a parent whose children grow up and leave home. Does that person cease to exist once their role as a caregiver diminishes? Clearly, these external identities aren't permanent either. This brings us to the crux of Anatta, the teaching that there is no fixed, unchanging essence within us that constitutes a self. Instead, what we call the self is better understood as a collection of ever-changing processes. In Buddhist philosophy, this is often described using the framework of the 5 aggregates or skandhas. These aggregates include form, our physical body, sensation, our sensory experiences, perception, how we interpret those experiences, mental formations, our thoughts, emotions and intentions, and consciousness, our awareness. Together, these 5 components create the illusion of a unified self, but none of them individually or collectively can be identified as a permanent independent entity. Why does this matter? Because so much of our suffering stems from clinging to the idea of a fixed self. When we believe that there's a solid me at the center of everything, we naturally become attached to certain outcomes, roles, or identities. We want to protect this imagined self, to make it happy, to ensure its survival. But life is inherently unpredictable, and trying to control the uncontrollable only leads to frustration and pain. By contrast, recognizing the truth of Anatta allows us to let go of this attachment. It frees us from the endless cycle of craving and aversion that keeps us trapped in suffering. Think about it this way. If there's no permanent self to defend or cling to, then many of the fears and anxieties that plague us begin to lose their power. Take rejection, for instance. So often we fear being rejected because we tie our worth to external validation. But if we understand Anatta, we see that there's no fixed self to be rejected in the first place. Rejection becomes less personal. It's simply a passing event, not a reflection of who we are. Similarly, anger or resentment toward others tends to dissolve when we recognize that they too lack a fixed self. There's no them to blame or resent, just a complex web of causes and conditions shaping their behavior. Of course, embracing Anatta doesn't mean denying the existence of individuality or agency. It's not about collapsing into nihilism or believing that nothing matters. On the contrary, Anatta invites us to engage more fully with life precisely because we're no longer burdened by the illusion of a separate, isolated self. Without the weight of ego-driven concerns, we can act with greater clarity, compassion, and freedom. In practical terms, this shift in perspective can have profound effects on our daily lives. For example, mindfulness meditation, one of the primary tools for exploring Anatta, teaches us to observe our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without identifying with them. Over time, this practice helps us develop a kind of inner spaciousness, where we can witness the unfolding of experience without getting caught up in it. This creates a buffer between stimulus and response, giving us more choice in how we react to life's challenges. Consider a common scenario. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Normally you might react with irritation, thinking, "How dare they?" But through the lens of Anatta, you might notice instead that the irritation is just a temporary reaction, not a reflection of some permanent you. With this awareness, you can choose whether to indulge the anger or let it pass, saving yourself unnecessary stress and conflict. Another benefit of Anatta is that it fosters a deeper connection to others. When we realize that we don't have a separate, independent self, the boundaries between me and you start to blur. We begin to see ourselves as part of a vast, interconnected whole. This realization naturally cultivates feelings of empathy and compassion as we recognize that everyone else is also navigating the same river of change and uncertainty. Ultimately, Anatta isn't meant to be an abstract philosophical concept. It's a lived experience. It's something you can test and verify for yourself through careful observation and practice. As we move forward in this video, we'll explore how to bring this teaching off the page and into your everyday life using tools like meditation, mindfulness, and reflective exercises. But for now, I invite you to sit with this idea for a moment. Let it challenge your assumptions. Allow it to open up new possibilities for how you relate to yourself and the world around you. Because at its core, Anatta is about liberation. It's about breaking free from the chains of ego and discovering a boundless freedom that lies beyond the confines of self. And while this journey may require courage and patience, the rewards are immeasurable: peace, clarity, and a profound sense of belonging to something far greater than ourselves. Chapter 2: The Illusion of Self. The illusion of self is one of the most persistent and pervasive misunderstandings we carry throughout our lives. It shapes how we interact with the world, how we relate to others, and even how we experience our own thoughts and emotions. Yet, when examined closely, this sense of self turns out to be far more fragile and far less substantial than it appears. In this chapter, we'll delve deeply into why the illusion of self causes so much suffering, how it manifests in everyday life, and what happens when we begin to see through its deceptive nature. To understand the illusion of self, let's start by exploring the mechanisms that create it. From the moment we're born, we're conditioned to think of ourselves as separate individuals. Language plays a huge role in this. Think about how often we use words like I, me, and mine. These pronouns reinforce the idea that there's a distinct entity at the center of our experience, an entity that exists independently from everything else. Over time, this linguistic habit becomes intertwined with our perception of reality. We begin to believe that the stories we tell ourselves about who we are correspond directly to some objective truth. But do they? Consider this. When you say, "I am intelligent," or "I am kind," what exactly are you referring to? Are these qualities fixed traits that define you forever? Or are they simply labels based on past behaviors or achievements? Take intelligence, for example. Intelligence isn't a static quality. It depends on context, effort, and countless other factors. Someone might excel at solving math problems but struggle with emotional intelligence. Does that mean they're intelligent in one area and not in another? And if intelligence fluctuates depending on circumstances, can it really be said to belong to a permanent self? Now let's turn our attention to emotions, which play a central role in shaping our sense of identity. How many times have you heard someone say, "I'm just not a morning person," or "I'm naturally anxious"? Statements like these imply that certain emotional tendencies are intrinsic parts of who we are, But emotions, like everything else, are impermanent. They arise in response to specific triggers, linger for a while, and then fade away. Even chronic emotional patterns like anxiety or depression can shift over time with the right support and practices. So if emotions aren't permanent, how can they constitute a stable self? This brings us to the concept of attachment, one of the key drivers of the illusion of self. Attachment doesn't just refer to clinging to material possessions. It also includes clinging to ideas, roles, and identities. When we identify strongly with certain aspects of ourselves, we become invested in maintaining them at all costs. For instance, imagine someone who prides themselves on being successful. Success becomes part of their self-concept, and any threat to that success feels like a personal attack. This attachment creates immense pressure to live up to expectations, both real and imagined. The fear of failure looms large, and the resulting stress can be overwhelming. But here's the catch. Success, like every other label or role, is impermanent. Careers rise and fall, relationships evolve, circumstances change. Clinging to an identity built on such shifting sands inevitably leads to disappointment and pain. This is where the teaching of Anatta offers profound relief. By recognizing that there's no fixed self to defend or uphold, we can release the need to cling to these transient identities. Instead of tying our worth to external achievements, we learn to rest in the awareness that underlies all experience, the spacious, open presence that remains unchanged regardless of what arises. Let's look at a practical example to illustrate this point. Picture someone who identifies strongly as a perfectionist. They set impossibly high standards for themselves and feel crushed whenever they fall short. Their entire sense of self hinges on meeting these unrealistic expectations. Now imagine introducing the perspective of Anatta into this scenario. What would happen if this person began to see their perfectionism not as an inherent trait, but as a pattern of behavior shaped by conditioning and habit? Would it still hold the same power over them? Probably not. By stepping back and observing their perfectionism without identifying with it, they could start to loosen its grip. Over time, they might even discover that letting go of the need to be perfect opens up new possibilities for creativity, joy, and connection. Another common manifestation of the illusion of self is the belief in a continuous narrative thread running through our lives. We tend to think of ourselves as the protagonists of our own stories with a clear beginning, middle, and end. But life rarely unfolds in such a linear fashion. Our memories are fragmented and often unreliable. Our goals and values shift over time. Even our personalities undergo significant changes as we grow older. So who exactly is the I that remains constant throughout all these transformations? Neuroscience supports this view of the self as a construct rather than a concrete entity. Studies show that our brains constantly update information based on new experiences, rewriting our sense of identity in the process. There's no single region of the brain responsible for housing the self. Instead, it emerges from the dynamic interplay of various neural networks. This scientific perspective aligns beautifully with the Buddhist teaching of Anatta. Both suggest that the self is less like a solid object and more like a kaleidoscope, endlessly rearranging itself in response to changing conditions. So why does the illusion of self persist despite evidence to the contrary? One reason is that it serves a practical purpose. Having a coherent sense of self helps us navigate the complexities of daily life. It gives us a framework for making decisions, setting goals, and interacting with others. Without some degree of self-concept, functioning in society would be nearly impossible. The problem arises when we mistake this useful fiction for ultimate reality. We forget that the self is merely a tool, a convenient shorthand for organizing experience, and start treating it as though it were absolute truth. Breaking free from the illusion of self requires patience and practice. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools for doing so. Through sustained attention to the present moment, we begin to notice the gaps between thoughts, the spaces where the self seems to dissolve, These moments of clarity reveal that what we call the self is actually a series of discrete events, thoughts, sensations, perceptions, strung together in rapid succession. Like frames in a movie reel, these events give the illusion of continuity, but upon closer inspection, they're anything but seamless. Mindfulness also teaches us to observe the impermanence of all phenomena, including the self. When we pay close attention to our inner experience, we see that nothing stays the same for very long. Thoughts arise and pass away. Emotions ebb and flow, even physical sensations come and go. This constant flux undermines the notion of a fixed, enduring self. Instead, we begin to see ourselves as processes rather than entities, as verbs rather than nouns. What happens when we truly internalize the insight of Anatta? For one thing, we stop taking ourselves so seriously. Without the burden of defending a rigid self-image, we become lighter, freer, and more adaptable. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable lose their sting because we no longer identify with the outcomes. Criticism, rejection, and failure cease to feel like existential threats, since there's no permanent self to damage. At the same time, we develop greater compassion for ourselves and others. Recognizing that everyone is navigating the same illusory landscape fosters a sense of shared humanity. In relationships, the realization of Anatta can transform dynamics in profound ways. When we let go of the need to assert our individuality or protect our ego, communication becomes more authentic and harmonious. Conflicts lose their intensity as we recognize that disagreements are rarely about fixed positions. They're about differing perspectives shaped by unique experiences. This understanding allows us to approach conflicts with curiosity rather than defensiveness, paving the way for deeper connection and mutual growth. On a broader scale, embracing Anatta encourages us to rethink our relationship with the world around us. If there's no separate self, then the boundaries between me and other blur. We begin to see ourselves as part of a vast, interconnected web of existence. This shift in perspective has far-reaching implications, from environmental stewardship to social justice. It inspires us to act not out of self-interest, but out of a recognition of our fundamental interdependence. Of course, integrating the teaching of Anatta into daily life takes time. Old habits die hard and the illusion of self has been ingrained in us since childhood, but every small step counts. Each time you catch yourself identifying with a thought or emotion, pause and remind yourself, this is not me, this is just a passing event. With consistent practice, these reminders accumulate, gradually weakening the grip of the illusion. As you continue on your journey, I encourage you to experiment with different ways of exploring Anatta. Try journaling about moments when you notice the self arising and dissolving. Engage in reflective exercises that challenge your assumptions about who you are. And above all, cultivate kindness toward yourself as you navigate this unfamiliar terrain. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate the self entirely, it's to see it clearly for what it is. A beautiful, ever-changing process that enables us to engage fully with life. By embracing the truth of Anatta, we open ourselves to a richer, more vibrant way of being. We trade the narrow confines of ego for the boundless freedom of interconnectedness. And in doing so, we discover that letting go of the illusion of self doesn't diminish us, it expands us, revealing the infinite potential that lies beyond the limits of identity. Chapter 3: Meditation as a tool for exploring Anatta. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools we have for exploring the profound teaching of Anatta, or not self. It's through meditation that we can move beyond intellectual understanding and directly experience the truth of impermanence, interconnectedness, and the fluid nature of self. In this chapter, we'll delve deeply into how meditation serves as a gateway to uncovering the insights of Anatta, offering practical guidance on how to use it effectively in your daily life. Let's start by clarifying what meditation is and isn't. At its core, meditation is simply the practice of paying attention. It's about training the mind to focus, observe, and let go. Unlike many activities we engage in throughout the day, which are often goal-oriented or externally focused, meditation invites us to turn inward. We become observers of our own experience, watching thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions arise and pass away without clinging to them or pushing them away. This act of mindful observation creates the conditions for glimpsing the truth of Anatta, the realization that there's no fixed, unchanging self at the center of our experience. One of the most accessible forms of meditation for beginners is mindfulness of breath. To begin, find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably, either cross-legged on the floor or in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. Keep your back straight but relaxed, allowing your hands to rest gently in your lap. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or lower your gaze to soften your visual field. Take a few deep breaths, inhaling slowly through your nose and exhaling fully through your mouth. Then allow your breathing to return to its natural rhythm. Now bring your attention to the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. You might focus on the cool touch of air at your nostrils, the rise and fall of your chest, or the gentle expansion and contraction of your abdomen. Whatever anchor point you choose, let it serve as a home base for your awareness. As you settle into the practice, you'll likely notice that thoughts begin to arise, plans for tomorrow, memories from yesterday, judgments about how you're doing. When this happens, don't fight against these thoughts or try to suppress them. Instead, acknowledge their presence with kindness and curiosity. Then gently guide your attention back to the breath. This simple process of noticing distractions and returning to the breath is where the magic happens. Each time you catch yourself drifting off and bring your focus back, you're strengthening your ability to observe rather than identify with your thoughts. Over time, this creates a sense of distance between you, the observer, and the content of your mind. It becomes clearer that thoughts are not who you are. They're merely events passing through the open sky of awareness. As you deepen your practice, you may begin to notice patterns in your thinking. Perhaps certain themes recur frequently: worries about the future, regrets about the past, or narratives about your identity. These patterns reflect the conditioning that has shaped your sense of self over time. But here's the key insight. Just because something arises habitually doesn't mean it's true or permanent. By observing these patterns without attaching to them, you loosen their hold on you. You start to see that the self is less like a solid structure and more like a river constantly flowing and changing. Another powerful technique for exploring Anatta is body scan meditation. This practice involves systematically bringing your attention to different parts of your physical form, from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes. Begin by lying down in a comfortable position, closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths to settle into the present moment. Then, starting at the crown of your head, slowly direct your awareness to each area of your body, noticing any sensations that are present. Is there tension in your jaw, warmth in your hands, heaviness in your legs? Whatever you find, greet it with acceptance and non-judgment. The body scan helps you connect with the impermanent and ever-changing nature of physical experience. For example, you might notice that an ache in your shoulder eases as you breathe into it, or that tingling in your fingers subsides after a few moments. These shifts remind you that even the body, the part of ourselves we often associate most closely with identity, is subject to constant change, and there's no fixed me residing within the body. Instead, it's a dynamic system responding to countless internal and external influences. Loving kindness meditation, also known as metta, offers another pathway to understanding Anatta. In this practice, you cultivate feelings of goodwill and compassion toward yourself and others. Start by silently repeating phrases like, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease." Once you've established a sense of warmth and care for yourself, extend these wishes outward to loved ones, acquaintances, strangers, and even people you find challenging. As you do so, you may notice resistance arising, especially when directing loving kindness towards someone you don't particularly like. This resistance highlights the boundaries we create around the self, separating me from them. Yet, as you continue practicing, those boundaries begin to dissolve. You realize that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering. This recognition fosters a profound sense of interconnectedness, dissolving the illusion of a separate self. Walking meditation provides yet another way to explore anatta. Unlike seated meditation, which emphasizes stillness, walking meditation engages movement as a means of cultivating awareness. Find a quiet space where you can walk slowly and uninterrupted, whether indoors or outdoors. Stand upright, feeling the weight of your body supported by the earth beneath your feet. Begin walking at a natural pace, paying close attention to the sensations involved in each step. Notice how your heel makes contact with the ground, followed by the ball of your foot, and then your toes. Feel the subtle shift in balance as you transfer your weight from one leg to the other. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the rhythm of your steps. Walking meditation reveals the seamless flow of experience. Every step is unique, shaped by the conditions of the moment. Just as no two snowflakes are identical, no two steps are exactly alike. This awareness extends beyond the physical act of walking to encompass your entire being. You see that everything, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, is in a state of continuous transformation. The self, far from being a static entity, emerges as a dynamic process unfolding in harmony with the world around you. For those ready to dive deeper, contemplative practices such as noting meditation or open awareness meditation can further illuminate the truth of anatta. Noting meditation involves mentally labeling experiences as they arise, thinking, feeling, hearing, and so on. This labeling helps you recognize the transient nature of phenomena, reinforcing the insight that nothing stays the same for very long. Open awareness meditation takes this a step further by encouraging you to rest in pure awareness itself, letting go of the need to focus on any particular object. In this vast, spacious state, the boundaries between self and other blur, revealing the interconnected fabric of existence. It's important to note that meditation isn't always easy or pleasant. Some sessions may feel peaceful and grounding, while others may stir up discomfort, restlessness, or even frustration. These challenges are an integral part of the journey. They show you where your attachments lie and provide opportunities to practice letting go. When difficult emotions arise during meditation, resist the urge to avoid or suppress them. Instead, meet them with compassion and curiosity. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this emotion? How does it manifest in my body? Can I simply allow it to be without trying to fix or change it? Over time, consistent meditation practice begins to transform your relationship with yourself and the world. You develop greater equanimity, able to face life's ups and downs with calm and clarity. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable lose their power to disturb you because you've learned to see them as passing clouds rather than permanent fixtures. Relationships improve as you become less reactive and more empathetic, recognizing that everyone else is navigating the same illusory landscape. Even mundane tasks take on a new richness, infused with a sense of wonder and presence. Ultimately, meditation teaches us to embrace life as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. It shows us that the self is not something to defend or protect. It's a fluid, ever-changing expression of the universe's creativity. By releasing the need to cling to a fixed identity, we tap into a boundless reservoir of peace, joy, and freedom. As you continue exploring anatta through meditation, Remember that progress is rarely linear. There will be days when insights flow effortlessly, and others when the mind feels foggy and resistant. That's okay. Trust the process and trust yourself. With patience and persistence, the truth of Anatta will reveal itself, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality that transforms every aspect of your existence. Chapter 4. Everyday Applications of Anatta. The teachings of Anatta, or not self, are not confined to the meditation cushion or philosophical contemplation. They have profound implications for how we navigate the challenges and joys of everyday life. In this chapter, we'll explore how the insights of Anatta can be applied to real-world situations, helping you cultivate greater peace, resilience, and connection in your daily existence. Whether you're dealing with stress at work, navigating relationships, or simply trying to savor the small moments of life, the wisdom of Anatta offers practical tools for transformation. Let's begin by examining one of the most common sources of suffering in modern life: resistance to change. Life is inherently unpredictable, yet so often we resist its natural flow, clinging to what we know and fearing the unknown. This resistance stems from our attachment to a fixed sense of self, a belief that there's a me who needs to maintain control over circumstances. But when we embrace the truth of Anatta, we see that life is a constant process of becoming, and that resisting this reality only amplifies our pain. Take commuting, for example. For many people, the daily commute is a source of frustration and stress. Traffic jams, delayed trains, and crowded buses can feel like personal affronts to our time and dignity. Yet, through the lens of Anatta, we can reframe these experiences. Instead of thinking, "Why does this always happen to me?" we might notice that traffic is just happening. It's not directed at us personally. There's no solid self being inconvenienced. There's simply an unfolding situation shaped by countless causes and conditions beyond our control. By letting go of the need to take it personally, we can approach the commute with more patience and ease. Perhaps we use the extra time to listen to a podcast, practice mindful breathing, or simply observe the rhythm of the city around us. Workplace stress provides another fertile ground for applying Anatta. Many of us tie our sense of identity to our careers, believing that our worth depends on our performance or achievements. When things don't go as planned, whether it's missing a deadline, receiving critical feedback, or facing layoffs, we may feel as though our very selves are under attack. But if we recognize that there's no permanent self to defend, we can detach from these outcomes without losing our motivation or passion for excellence. Instead of seeing setbacks as failures of character, we view them as opportunities for growth and learning. This shift in perspective not only reduces anxiety but also fosters a healthier relationship with work, allowing us to engage with tasks more creatively and joyfully. Consider someone who identifies strongly as a perfectionist. Their rigid standards create immense pressure, leading to burnout and dissatisfaction. Through the lens of Anatta, they might come to see their perfectionism not as an inherent trait, but as a pattern conditioned by past experiences and societal expectations. With this awareness, they can begin to loosen the grip of perfectionism, embracing imperfection as part of the human experience. Over time, they discover that letting go of the need to be flawless opens up space for authenticity, collaboration, and innovation. Relationships too benefit greatly from the insights of Anatta. So much conflict arises from the belief that there's a separate, independent self with fixed desires and needs. We say things like, "You'll never listen to me," or "You hurt my feelings," as though the other person exists solely to meet our expectations. But when we recognize that both parties are fluid, ever-changing processes shaped by countless factors, these conflicts lose their intensity. Instead of reacting defensively, we can approach disagreements with curiosity and compassion, asking ourselves, what fears or insecurities might be driving this reaction? How can I respond in a way that honors both of our humanity? Imagine a couple arguing about household responsibilities. One partner feels overwhelmed by the workload while the other feels unappreciated for their efforts. Through the lens of Anatta, they might realize that their roles, breadwinner, caregiver, homemaker, are not fixed identities, but flexible arrangements designed to meet shared goals. By stepping back from ego-driven narratives, they can collaborate more effectively, finding solutions that honor each other's contributions without reinforcing rigid boundaries between you all and me. Parenting is another area where Anatta can profoundly transform dynamics. Raising children often triggers deep-seated fears about identity and legacy. Parents may worry about whether they're doing enough, whether their kids will succeed, or whether they'll be judged by others. These anxieties stem from the illusion of a separate self, one that seeks validation through external achievements. But when parents embrace the truth of Anatta, they let go of the need to control outcomes. They recognize that their children are autonomous beings on their own journeys, shaped by forces far beyond parental influence. This realization allows them to parent with greater presence and love, supporting their children's growth without imposing unrealistic expectations. Even seemingly mundane activities like eating can become opportunities to practice Anatta. Mindful eating invites us to slow down and pay attention to the sensory details of our meals, the colors, textures, flavors, and aromas. As we do so, we notice how our perceptions shift moment by moment. The first bite of a juicy apple might taste sweet and refreshing, while subsequent bites reveal subtle nuances. This awareness reminds us that nothing remains static, not even the simplest pleasures. It also helps us break free from habitual patterns of consumption, driven by cravings or emotional triggers. Instead of mindlessly devouring food to fill a void, we eat with gratitude and intention, honoring the interconnected web of farmers, distributors, and ecosystems that brought the meal to our plate. Physical health is another domain where Anatta proves invaluable. So often, we identify with our bodies in ways that lead to dissatisfaction or shame. We criticize ourselves for not looking a certain way or compare our fitness levels to others. These judgments reinforce the illusion of a fixed self, one that must conform to arbitrary standards to be deemed worthy. But when we see the body as a dynamic system in constant flux, we develop greater acceptance and care. We understand that aging, illness, and injury are natural parts of the human experience, not signs of failure. This perspective encourages us to treat our bodies with kindness, prioritizing movement, nourishment, and rest not out of obligation, but out of love. The environmental crisis offers perhaps the most urgent application of Anatta. Modern society's exploitation of natural resources reflects a deep-seated belief in separation, a conviction that humans exist apart from the earth and its ecosystems. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that harming the planet inevitably harms ourselves. Every action we take ripples outward, affecting countless beings across space and time. This understanding inspires us to live more sustainably, making choices that honor the delicate balance of life. From reducing waste to supporting ethical businesses, every small step contributes to a larger shift toward harmony and stewardship. Social justice movements also draw strength from the insights of Anatta. Oppression thrives on the illusion of separateness, the belief that some lives matter more than others. But when we recognize that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering, we're compelled to act with courage and compassion. Whether it's advocating for marginalized communities, challenging systemic inequalities, or fostering inclusivity in our personal circles, the teaching of Anatta reminds us that liberation is collective, not individual. On a psychological level, Anatta helps us navigate emotions like anger, jealousy, and fear. Rather than identifying with these states, we observe them as temporary visitors passing through the open sky of awareness. For instance, imagine feeling irritated by a co-worker's behavior. Through the lens of Anatta, you might notice that irritation isn't a reflection of some permanent you. It's simply a reaction shaped by specific circumstances. With this awareness, you can choose whether to indulge the emotion or let it pass, saving yourself unnecessary conflict and stress. Over time, this practice cultivates emotional agility, enabling you to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity and grace. Creativity, too, flourishes under the influence of Anatta. Artists, writers, and innovators often struggle with self-doubt, fearing that their work won't measure up to external standards. This fear stems from attachment to a fixed identity, one that defines success narrowly. But when creators let go of the need to prove themselves, they tap into a boundless reservoir of inspiration. They see their work not as a reflection of who they are, but as an expression of something larger, an ongoing conversation with the world. This mindset liberates them to experiment boldly, trusting that failure is just another step on the path to discovery. Finally, Anatta transforms the way we approach death, the ultimate reminder of impermanence. Fear of death often arises from the illusion of a separate self, one that believes it can achieve immortality through legacy or memory. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that death is not an ending but a continuation. Just as water evaporates into clouds and returns to rivers, so too does energy cycle endlessly through the universe. This understanding brings comfort, allowing us to face mortality with equanimity and gratitude. Incorporating Anatta into daily life doesn't require drastic changes. Small, consistent practices make a big difference over time. Start by setting aside a few minutes each day to reflect on the impermanent nature of your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Notice how labels like happy, sad, or angry come and go, leaving behind the spacious awareness that remains unchanged. Extend this observation to interactions with others, recognizing that everyone you encounter is navigating the same river of change and uncertainty. As you deepen your understanding of Anatta, you'll find that life becomes richer and more vibrant. Challenges lose their sting, replaced by opportunities for growth and insight. Relationships deepen, rooted in mutual respect and empathy. Even ordinary moments take on a luminous quality, infused with the wonder of interconnectedness. You begin to see that letting go of the illusion of self doesn't diminish you, it expands you, revealing the infinite potential that lies beyond the limits of identity. By embracing the truth of Anatta, we unlock a hidden dimension of freedom. We stop fighting against the tide of life and learn to flow with it instead. This surrender isn't passive resignation, it's active participation in the dance of existence, guided by wisdom and compassion. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a beautiful mirage shimmering on the horizon of awareness. Chapter 5. The 5 Aggregates, Skandhas. Breaking down the components of self. To truly understand Anatta, the teaching of not-self, we must delve into one of Buddhism's most foundational frameworks, the 5 aggregates, or Skandhas. These aggregates provide a detailed map for deconstructing the illusion of a fixed, independent self. By breaking down what we call the self into its component parts, we can see that none of these elements individually or collectively can be identified as a permanent, unchanging essence. This chapter will explore each of the 5 aggregates in depth, offering practical insights and reflections to help you integrate this understanding into your daily life. Let's begin by defining the 5 aggregates. In Buddhist philosophy, they are form, rupa sensation, vedana, perception, samjana, mental formations, samskara and consciousness, vijnana. Together, these 5 categories encompass all aspects of human experience. They represent the raw materials from which the illusion of self arises. But here's the critical point. No single aggregate constitutes a self, nor does their combination create a unified, enduring entity, and instead, they're like threads woven together to create the tapestry of our moment-to-moment existence, a tapestry that is constantly being rewoven as conditions change. 1. Form, rupa, the physical body. The first aggregate, form, refers to the physical body, all the tangible, material aspects of our being. This includes everything from our bones and muscles to our skin, organs, and even the sensory faculties like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body itself. Form is the foundation upon which the other aggregates depend. Without it, there would be no vehicle through which we experience the world. But when we examine form closely, we see that it's anything but static. Our bodies are in a state of constant flux. Cells regenerate, hair grows, nails lengthen, and wrinkles form as time passes. Even within a single day, our energy levels rise and fall, influenced by factors like sleep, nutrition, hydration, and stress. Consider how different you feel after a good night's rest compared to a restless one, or how your body responds to exercise versus prolonged sitting. These changes remind us that the body is not a solid, immutable object. It's a dynamic system interacting with countless internal and external forces. Moreover, the body doesn't exist in isolation. It's deeply interconnected with the environment. Every breath we take connects us to the atmosphere around us. Every meal we eat links us to plants, animals, farmers, and ecosystems. When we recognize this interdependence, the notion of a separate, autonomous self begins to dissolve. There's no clear boundary where me ends and the world begins. Instead, we see that the body is part of a vast web of relationships, shaped by causes and conditions far beyond our control. Practically speaking, reflecting on the impermanent and interconnected nature of form can transform how we relate to our bodies. Rather than criticizing ourselves for not looking a certain way or comparing our fitness levels to others, we develop greater acceptance and care. We treat the body as a precious gift, a vessel for experiencing life, not as an object to be perfected or controlled. This shift in perspective fosters gratitude and reduces suffering caused by unrealistic expectations. 2. Sensation, vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. The second aggregate, sensation, refers to the immediate visceral experiences that arise when our senses come into contact with the world. These sensations are classified into 3 categories: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. For example, the warmth of sunlight on your skin might feel pleasant, while the sting of a paper cut feels unpleasant. A neutral sensation could be something like the feeling of air brushing against your arm as you walk down the street. Sensations are automatic responses. They happen without conscious effort. Yet, they play a crucial role in shaping our reactions and behaviors. When we encounter a pleasant sensation, we tend to crave more of it. When we experience an unpleasant sensation, we instinctively try to avoid or suppress it. And when a sensation is neutral, we often overlook it altogether, focusing instead on more stimulating experiences. Through the lens of Anatta, we see that sensations are fleeting and impersonal. They arise in response to specific stimuli and fade away just as quickly. For instance, imagine sipping a hot cup of tea. At first, the warmth might feel soothing and comforting, but if you hold the cup too long, the heat becomes uncomfortable. The same stimulus shifts from pleasant to unpleasant depending on context. This impermanence undermines the idea that sensations define who we are. After all, if sensations were an intrinsic part of the self, wouldn't they remain consistent over time? Mindfulness meditation helps us observe sensations with detachment, noticing how they arise and pass without clinging to them or pushing them away. Over time, this practice cultivates equanimity, a balanced state of mind that allows us to face both pleasure and pain with calm and clarity. Instead of chasing highs or avoiding lows, we learn to meet each moment as it is, free from the tyranny of craving and aversion. 3. Perception, samjana, how we interpret experience. The third aggregate, perception, involves the process of recognizing and interpreting sensory input. It's the faculty that allows us to identify objects, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations based on past experiences and conditioning. For example, when you see a red fruit hanging from a tree, your perception tells you it's an apple because you've encountered similar fruits before. Perception shapes our reality in profound ways. It filters incoming information, organizing it into familiar patterns that make sense to us. However, this filtering process also introduces bias and distortion. Two people can witness the same event and interpret it differently based on their unique histories and perspectives. For instance, one person might view a loud concert as exhilarating, while another finds it overwhelming. Neither interpretation is inherently true, they're simply constructions of the mind. From the perspective of Anatta, perception highlights the subjective, constructed nature of experience. What we perceive isn't reality itself, but a representation created by the mind. This realization challenges the assumption that there's an objective, unchanging self at the center of perception. Instead, we see that perception is fluid and context-dependent, shaped by countless factors beyond our awareness. By becoming mindful of how perception influences our thoughts and actions, we gain greater freedom to reinterpret events in healthier ways. For example, instead of perceiving criticism as a personal attack, we might reframe it as constructive feedback aimed at fostering growth. This shift in perspective reduces defensiveness and opens up space for learning and connection. 4. Mental formations, samskara, thoughts, emotions, and intentions. The fourth aggregate, mental formations, encompasses all the cognitive and emotional processes that shape our inner world. This includes thoughts, emotions, desires, intentions, habits, and volitional actions, the choices we make based on our preferences and inclinations. Mental formations are the architects of karma, determining the trajectory of our lives through the seeds we plant in each moment. Thoughts and emotions are particularly powerful components of this aggregate. They color our experience, influencing how we perceive and respond to situations. For instance, someone who harbors resentment toward a colleague may find themselves constantly irritated by minor annoyances, whereas someone who practices forgiveness might approach the same interactions with patience and understanding. Through the lens of Anatta, we see that mental formations are transient and conditioned. They arise in response to specific triggers and fade away when those triggers subside. Even deeply ingrained habits and patterns can shift over time with intentional effort. For example, someone who identifies as chronically anxious might discover that mindfulness practices help them interrupt the cycle of worry, creating new neural pathways associated with calm and clarity. Recognizing the impermanent nature of mental formations liberates us from identification with them. Instead of saying, "I am angry," we might notice, anger is present right now. This subtle shift in language reflects a deeper shift in perspective, one that acknowledges the temporary, impersonal nature of emotions. With practice, this awareness weakens the grip of habitual thought patterns, allowing us to act with greater wisdom and compassion. 5. Consciousness, vijnana, awareness of experience. The fifth and final aggregate, consciousness, refers to the faculty of awareness that underlies all experience. It's the light of knowing that illuminates form, sensation, perception, and mental formations, enabling us to engage with the world. Without consciousness, there would be no subject-object relationship, no distinction between me and other. Consciousness is often misunderstood as equivalent to the self. People assume that because they're aware, there must be a permanent, unchanging observer behind that awareness. But in Buddhism, consciousness is seen as another aggregate, a dependent, conditioned phenomenon rather than an independent entity. Just as fire depends on fuel to burn, consciousness depends on the other aggregates to function. When the aggregates dissolve, as happens during deep sleep, unconsciousness, or death, consciousness ceases to operate. Understanding consciousness as part of the 5 aggregates dissolves the illusion of a separate self. There's no central in directing the show. There's simply an unfolding process of awareness responding to changing conditions. This insight fosters humility and openness, reminding us that we're participants in a vast, interconnected web of existence. Integrating the 5 aggregates into daily life. Now that we've explored each of the 5 aggregates, let's consider how they work together to create the illusion of self. and how recognizing their impermanent, interdependent nature can transform our lives. Imagine a moment of conflict with a loved one. Through the lens of the aggregates, we can break down the experience. Form. Your body tenses up, heart racing, as adrenaline surges through your veins. Sensation. You feel an unpleasant tightness in your chest and a heaviness in your stomach. Perception. Your mind interprets the situation as a threat, labeling your partner's words as hurtful or unfair. Mental formations. Anger flares up, followed by defensive thoughts and a desire to retaliate. Consciousness. All of these elements coalesce into a cohesive experience, giving rise to the belief that you are being attacked. By observing this process with mindfulness, you can step back from identification with any single element. You notice that the tension in your body is temporary, the unpleasant sensations will pass, the perception is biased, the anger is conditioned, and the awareness witnessing it all remains unchanged. This clarity creates space to respond skillfully, choosing compassion over reactivity. Incorporating the 5 aggregates into daily life takes practice, but the rewards are immense. Start by setting aside time each day to reflect on your experiences through this framework. Ask yourself, what forms am I encountering? What sensations am I feeling? How am I perceiving this situation? What thoughts and emotions are arising? And finally, who or what is aware of all this? Over time, these questions cultivate insight, helping you see through the illusion of self and embrace the truth of interconnectedness. Ultimately, the 5 aggregates offer a roadmap for liberation. By dismantling the constructs that sustain the illusion of a fixed self, we open ourselves to boundless freedom and joy. We stop clinging to identities and outcomes, trusting instead in the natural flow of life. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a beautiful mirage, shimmering on the horizon of awareness. Chapter 6. Emptiness isn't nothingness. Clarifying misconceptions about Anatta. One of the most common misunderstandings about Anatta, or not self, is that it equates to emptiness, or worse, nothingness. This misconception can make the teaching feel cold, nihilistic, or even frightening at first glance. After all, if there's no self, does that mean we're hollow shells devoid of meaning? Does it imply that life itself is pointless? These fears arise from conflating Anatta with a lack of existence, but nothing could be further from the truth. In this chapter, we'll explore why emptiness in Buddhism isn't about voids or absences, it's about fullness, interconnectedness, and boundless potential. By clarifying these misconceptions, we can embrace Anatta as a source of profound liberation rather than existential despair. Let's start by addressing the root of the confusion. The term emptiness often carries negative connotations in everyday language. When we say something is empty, we usually mean it lacks substance, value, or purpose. A glass without water is empty. A room without furniture feels barren. So when people hear that Anatta teaches the absence of a fixed self, they may instinctively assume it implies an absence of everything meaningful. But in Buddhist philosophy, emptiness, known as sunyata, has a radically different meaning. It doesn't refer to a lack of existence. Instead, it points to the absence of inherent, independent existence. To understand this distinction, imagine a table. On the surface, the table seems solid and self-contained, a discrete object with clear boundaries. But look closer. What is the table made of? Wood, nails, glue, perhaps varnish or paint? And what are those materials composed of? Molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, all arising through countless causes and conditions. The wood came from trees which grew thanks to sunlight, soil, rain, and human effort. The nails were forged in factories using raw materials extracted from mines. Even the design of the table reflects cultural influences, technological advancements, and individual creativity. When we examine the table this way, we see that it doesn't exist independently. It's a composite phenomenon, dependent on myriad factors for its existence. Its self is relational, contingent, and interdependent. This is what Buddhists mean by emptiness, the recognition that nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence on other things, forming an intricate web of causality and connection. Far from being bleak, this understanding reveals the richness and vibrancy of reality. The table isn't less real because it lacks inherent existence. It's more real precisely because its true nature encompasses the entire universe. Now let's apply this insight to the concept of self. Just as the table depends on countless conditions for its existence, so too does the self emerge from an intricate network of relationships. Your body relies on food, water, air, and sunlight to sustain itself. Your thoughts and emotions are shaped by your upbringing, culture, education, and experiences. Even your sense of identity is influenced by societal norms, media messages, and interpersonal dynamics. Like the table, you don't exist as a standalone entity. You're part of a vast, interconnected whole. This realization transforms how we think about emptiness. Rather than signifying absence or loss, emptiness becomes a doorway to wholeness. It invites us to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as expressions of something far greater, an infinite tapestry woven from countless threads of cause and effect. Each thread contributes to the pattern, yet none can claim sole ownership of the design. In this sense, emptiness isn't a negation of self, it's an affirmation of interconnectedness. Consider the implications of this perspective for daily life. If we believe in a fixed, independent self, we naturally prioritize our own needs and desires over those of others. We build walls around ourselves, defending our territory and seeking validation to bolster our fragile egos. But when we recognize the emptiness of self, these walls begin to crumble. We see that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others, just as the health of one strand affects the strength of the entire web. This insight fosters compassion, empathy, and a deep sense of responsibility for the collective good. Take environmental stewardship, for example. Modern society often treats the earth as a resource to exploit for personal gain, viewing humans as separate from and superior to nature. This mindset stems from the illusion of a separate self, one that believes it can thrive independently of the ecosystems that sustain it. But when we embrace the truth of emptiness, we recognize that harming the planet ultimately harms ourselves. Every action we take ripples outward, affecting countless beings across space and time. This understanding inspires us to live more sustainably, making choices that honor the delicate balance of life. Similarly, social justice movements draw strength from the insights of emptiness. Oppression thrives on the illusion of separateness, the belief that some lives matter more than others. But when we see that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering, we're compelled to act with courage and compassion. Whether it's advocating for marginalized communities, challenging systemic inequalities, or fostering inclusivity in our personal circles, the teaching of emptiness reminds us that liberation is collective, not individual. On a psychological level, emptiness helps us navigate emotions like anger, jealousy, and fear. Instead of identifying with these states, we observe them as temporary visitors passing through the open sky of awareness. For instance, imagine feeling irritated by a co-worker's behavior. Through the lens of emptiness, you might notice that irritation isn't a reflection of some permanent you. It's simply a reaction shaped by specific circumstances. With this awareness, you can choose whether to indulge the emotion or let it pass, saving yourself unnecessary conflict and stress. Over time, this practice cultivates emotional agility, enabling you to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity and grace. Creativity, too, flourishes under the influence of emptiness. Artists, writers, and innovators often struggle with self-doubt, fearing that their work won't measure up to external standards. This fear stems from attachment to a fixed identity, one that defines success narrowly. But when creators let go of the need to prove themselves, they tap into a boundless reservoir of inspiration. They see their work not as a reflection of who they are, but as an expression of something larger, an ongoing conversation with the world. This mindset liberates them to experiment boldly, trusting that failure is just another step on the path to discovery. Even seemingly mundane activities like eating can become opportunities to practice emptiness. Mindful eating invites us to slow down and pay attention to the sensory details of our meals, the colors, textures, flavors, and aromas. As we do so, we notice how our perceptions shift moment by moment. The first bite of a juicy apple might taste sweet and refreshing, while subsequent bites reveal subtle nuances. This awareness reminds us that nothing remains static, not even the simplest pleasures. It also helps us break free from habitual patterns of consumption driven by cravings or emotional triggers. Instead of mindlessly devouring food to fill a void, we eat with gratitude and intention, honoring the interconnected web of farmers, distributors, and ecosystems that brought the meal to our plate. Physical health is another domain where emptiness proves invaluable. So often we identify with our bodies in ways that lead to dissatisfaction or shame. We criticize ourselves for not looking a certain way or compare our fitness levels to others. These judgments reinforce the illusion of a fixed self, one that must conform to arbitrary standards to be deemed worthy. But when we see the body as a dynamic system in constant flux, we develop greater acceptance and care. We understand that aging, illness, and injury are natural parts of the human experience, not signs of failure. This perspective encourages us to treat our bodies with kindness, prioritizing movement, nourishment, and rest, not out of obligation but out of love. The environmental crisis offers perhaps the most urgent application of emptiness. Modern society's exploitation of natural resources reflects a deep-seated belief in separation, a conviction that humans exist apart from the Earth and its ecosystems. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that harming the planet inevitably harms ourselves. Every action we take ripples outward, affecting countless beings across space and time. This understanding inspires us to live more sustainably, making choices that honor the delicate balance of life. From reducing waste to supporting ethical businesses, every small step contributes to a larger shift toward harmony and stewardship. Social justice movements also draw strength from the insights of emptiness. Oppression thrives on the illusion of separateness, the belief that some lives matter more than others. But when we recognize that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering, we're compelled to act with courage and compassion. Whether it's advocating for marginalized communities, challenging systemic inequalities, or fostering inclusivity in our personal circles, the teaching of emptiness reminds us that liberation is collective, not individual. On a psychological level, emptiness helps us navigate emotions like anger, jealousy, and fear. Rather than identifying with these states, we observe them as temporary visitors passing through the open sky of awareness. For instance, imagine feeling irritated by a co-worker's behavior. Through the lens of emptiness, you might notice that irritation isn't a reflection of some permanent you. It's simply a reaction shaped by specific circumstances. With this awareness, you can choose whether to indulge the emotion or let it pass, saving yourself unnecessary conflict and stress. Over time, this practice cultivates emotional agility, enabling you to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity and grace. Creativity, too, flourishes under the influence of emptiness. Artists, writers, and innovators often struggle with self-doubt, fearing that their work won't measure up to external standards. This fear stems from attachment to a fixed identity, one that defines success narrowly. But when creators let go of the need to prove themselves, they tap into a boundless reservoir of inspiration. They see their work not as a reflection of who they are, but as an expression of something larger, an ongoing conversation with the world. This mindset liberates them to experiment boldly, trusting that failure is just another step on the path to discovery. Finally, emptiness transforms the way we approach death, the ultimate reminder of impermanence. Fear of death often arises from the illusion of a separate self, one that believes it can achieve immortality through legacy or memory. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that death is not an ending, but a continuation. Just as water evaporates into clouds and returns to rivers, so too does energy cycle endlessly through the universe. This understanding brings comfort, allowing us to face mortality with equanimity and gratitude. Incorporating emptiness into daily life doesn't require drastic changes. Small, consistent practices make a big difference over time. Start by setting aside a few minutes each day to reflect on the interdependent nature of your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Notice how labels like happy, sad, or angry come and go, leaving behind the spacious awareness that remains unchanged. Extend this observation to interactions with others, recognizing that everyone you encounter is navigating the same river of change and uncertainty. As you deepen your understanding of emptiness, you'll find that life becomes richer and more vibrant. Challenges lose their sting, replaced by opportunities for growth and insight. Relationships deepen, rooted in mutual respect and empathy. Even ordinary moments take on a luminous quality, infused with the wonder of interconnectedness. You begin to see that letting go of the illusion of self doesn't diminish you, it expands you, revealing the infinite potential that lies beyond the limits of identity. By embracing the truth of emptiness, we unlock a hidden dimension of freedom. We stop fighting against the tide of life and learn to flow with it instead. This surrender isn't passive resignation, it's active participation in the dance of existence, guided by wisdom and compassion. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a beautiful mirage shimmering on the horizon of awareness. Chapter 7. How Anatta reduces stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety are among the most pervasive challenges of modern life. Whether it's the pressure to succeed at work, the constant barrage of information from technology, or the uncertainty of an ever-changing world, many of us find ourselves caught in cycles of worry, tension, and overwhelm. While stress and anxiety are natural responses to certain situations, they often spiral out of control when we cling to rigid ideas about who we are and how life should unfold. This is where the teaching of Anatta, or not-self, offers profound relief. By helping us let go of the illusion of a fixed self, Anatta dismantles the root causes of stress and anxiety, opening the door to greater peace, resilience, and well-being. Let's begin by examining why stress and anxiety arise in the first place. At their core, these states stem from resistance to impermanence, the refusal to accept that life is inherently unpredictable. We want security, stability, and certainty, yet reality rarely conforms to our expectations. When things don't go as planned, whether it's missing a deadline, losing a job, or facing health issues, we feel threatened. Our minds race with worst-case scenarios, replaying past mistakes or obsessing over future possibilities. This mental chatter amplifies our distress, creating a feedback loop of suffering. The illusion of self plays a central role in perpetuating this cycle. When we believe in a fixed, independent self, we naturally become attached to outcomes, roles, and identities. We tie our worth to external achievements, relationships, or circumstances, leaving us vulnerable to feelings of inadequacy or failure when those things change. For example, someone who identifies strongly as successful may experience intense anxiety during periods of financial instability. Similarly, someone who bases their self-worth on romantic relationships may feel devastated after a breakup. These attachments create immense pressure to maintain control, leading to chronic stress and exhaustion. Through the lens of Anatta, however, we see that there's no permanent self to defend or uphold. The self is not a solid entity, but a fluid, ever-changing process, shaped by countless causes and conditions. Recognizing this truth liberates us from the need to cling to specific outcomes or identities. Instead of viewing setbacks as personal failures, we understand them as part of the natural ebb and flow of life. This shift in perspective reduces the emotional charge of difficult experiences, allowing us to face them with greater calm and clarity. Consider the example of someone dealing with workplace stress. Imagine they've been passed over for a promotion, a situation that might trigger feelings of inadequacy, frustration, or resentment. Through the lens of Anatta, they can reframe this experience. Rather than seeing it as a reflection of their inherent worth, they recognize that promotions depend on factors beyond their control, budget constraints, organizational priorities, or even interpersonal dynamics. There's no fixed self being slighted. There's simply an unfolding situation shaped by countless variables. With this awareness, they can release the need to take it personally, freeing themselves from unnecessary suffering. Mindfulness meditation is one of the most effective tools for applying Anatta to stress and anxiety. By training the mind to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations without identifying with them, we create a buffer between stimulus and response. For instance, imagine you're feeling anxious about an upcoming presentation. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind floods with catastrophic predictions. Without mindfulness, you might get swept away by these reactions, spiraling deeper into panic. But through the practice of observing anxiety as a temporary event, not as a reflection of who you are, you can interrupt this cycle. You notice the physical sensations, acknowledge the thoughts, and gently guide your attention back to the present moment. Over time, this practice cultivated equanimity, enabling you to navigate stressful situations with greater ease. Another powerful technique for reducing stress through Anatta is body scan meditation. This practice involves systematically bringing your attention to different parts of your physical form, noticing any sensations that are present. As you do so, you become aware of how stress manifests in the body, tightness in the chest, knots in the stomach, tension in the jaw. By observing these sensations without judgment, you loosen their hold on you. You see that they're not permanent fixtures, but passing phenomena shaped by specific triggers. This awareness creates space to respond skillfully, choosing relaxation techniques like deep breathing or gentle movement to soothe the nervous system. Walking meditation also provides a practical way to apply Anatta to stress reduction. Unlike seated meditation, which emphasizes stillness, walking meditation engages movement as a means of cultivating awareness. Find a quiet space where you can walk slowly and uninterrupted, whether indoors or outdoors. Stand upright, feeling the weight of your body supported by the earth beneath your feet. Begin walking at a natural pace, paying close attention to the sensations involved in each step. Notice how your heel makes contact with the ground, followed by the ball of your foot and then your toes. Feel the subtle shift in balance as you transfer your weight from one leg to the other. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the rhythm of your steps. This simple act of mindful walking helps ground you in the present moment, breaking the grip of anxious thoughts. It reminds you that life unfolds step by step, moment by moment. Even in the midst of chaos, there's always a stable foundation beneath your feet, the earth itself. Connecting with this stability fosters a sense of safety and trust, counteracting the restlessness and fear that accompany anxiety. Loving-kindness meditation or metta offers yet another pathway to healing stress and anxiety. In this practice, you cultivate feelings of goodwill and compassion toward yourself and others. Start by silently repeating phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." Once you've established a sense of warmth and care for yourself, extend these wishes outward to loved ones, acquaintances, strangers, and even people you find challenging. As you do so, you may notice resistance arising, especially when directing loving kindness towards someone you don't particularly like. This resistance highlights the boundaries we create around the self, separating me from them. Yet as you continue practicing, those boundaries begin to dissolve. You realize that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering. This recognition fosters a profound sense of interconnectedness, dissolving the isolation and fear that fuel anxiety. One of the most transformative aspects of Anatta is its ability to reframe our relationship with uncertainty. So much of our stress stems from the desire to predict and control the future. We crave guarantees, seeking reassurance that everything will turn out okay. But life rarely offers such certainties. Through the lens of Anatta, we embrace uncertainty as an integral part of existence. Just as rivers carve new paths as they flow, so too does life constantly reshape itself in response to changing conditions. This understanding doesn't eliminate challenges, it transforms how we relate to them. Instead of resisting the unknown, we meet it with curiosity and openness, trusting in our capacity to adapt and grow. Consider someone navigating a major life transition, such as moving to a new city or starting a new job. These changes often provoke anxiety because they disrupt familiar routines and introduce unfamiliar variables. Through the lens of Anatta, they can see that transitions are opportunities for reinvention. There's no fixed self to lose in the process. There's simply a continuous unfolding of possibilities. By letting go of attachment to old identities, they open themselves up to new experiences, fostering resilience and creativity. Relationships too benefit greatly from the insights of Anatta. So much conflict arises from the belief that there's a separate, independent self with fixed desires and needs. We say things like, "You never listen to me," or "You hurt my feelings," as though the other person exists solely to meet our expectations. But when we recognize that both parties are fluid, ever-changing processes shaped by countless factors, these conflicts lose their intensity. Instead of reacting defensively, we can approach disagreements with curiosity and compassion, asking ourselves, what fears or insecurities might be driving this reaction? How can I respond in a way that honors both of our humanity? Imagine a couple arguing about household responsibilities. One partner feels overwhelmed by the workload while the other feels unappreciated for their efforts. Through the lens of Anatta, they might realize that their roles, breadwinner, caregiver, homemaker, are not fixed identities, but flexible arrangements designed to meet shared goals. By stepping back from ego-driven narratives, they can collaborate more effectively, finding solutions that honor each other's contributions without reinforcing rigid boundaries between you and me. Even seemingly mundane activities like eating can become opportunities to practice Anatta. Mindful eating invites us to slow down and pay attention to the sensory details of our meals, the colors, textures, flavors, and aromas. As we do so, we notice how our perceptions shift moment by moment. The first bite of a juicy apple might taste sweet and refreshing, while subsequent bites reveal subtle nuances. This awareness reminds us that nothing remains static, not even the simplest pleasures. It also helps us break free from habitual patterns of consumption, driven by cravings or emotional triggers. Instead of mindlessly devouring food to fill a void, we eat with gratitude and intention, honoring the interconnected web of farmers, distributors, and ecosystems that brought the meal to our plate. Physical health is another domain where Anatta proves invaluable. So often we identify with our bodies in ways that lead to dissatisfaction or shame. We criticize ourselves for not looking a certain way or compare our fitness levels to others. These judgments reinforce the illusion of a fixed self, one that must conform to arbitrary standards to be deemed worthy. But when we see the body as a dynamic system in constant flux, we develop greater acceptance and care. We understand that aging, illness, and injury are natural parts of the human experience, not signs of failure. This perspective encourages us to treat our bodies with kindness, prioritizing movement, nourishment, and rest, not out of obligation but out of love. The environmental crisis offers perhaps the most urgent application of Anatta. Modern society's exploitation of natural resources reflects a deep-seated belief in separation, a conviction that humans exist apart from the earth and its ecosystems. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that harming the planet inevitably harms ourselves. Every action we take ripples outward, affecting countless beings across space and time. This understanding inspires us to live more sustainably, making choices that honor the delicate balance of life. From reducing waste to supporting ethical businesses, every small step contributes to a larger shift toward harmony and stewardship. Social justice movements also draw strength from the insights of Anatta. Oppression thrives on the illusion of separateness, the belief that some lives matter more than others. But when we recognize that all beings share the same longing for happiness and freedom from suffering, we're compelled to act with courage and compassion. Whether it's advocating for marginalized communities, challenging systemic inequalities, or fostering inclusivity in our personal circles, the teaching of Anatta reminds us that liberation is collective, not individual. On a psychological level, Anatta helps us navigate emotions like anger, jealousy, and fear. Rather than identifying with these states, we observe them as temporary visitors passing through the open sky of awareness. For instance, imagine feeling irritated by co-workers' behavior. Through the lens of Anatta, you might notice that irritation isn't a reflection of some permanent you. It's simply a reaction shaped by specific circumstances. With this awareness, you can choose whether to indulge the emotion or let it pass, saving yourself unnecessary conflict and stress. Over time, this practice cultivates emotional agility, enabling you to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity and grace. Creativity too flourishes under the influence of Anatta. Artists, writers, and innovators often struggle with self-doubt, fearing that their work won't measure up to external standards. This fear stems from attachment to a fixed identity, one that defines success narrowly. But when creators let go of the need to prove themselves, they tap into a boundless reservoir of inspiration. They see their work not as a reflection of who they are, but as an expression of something larger, an ongoing conversation with the world. This mindset liberates them to experiment boldly, trusting that failure is just another step on the path to discovery. Finally, Anatta transforms the way we approach death, the ultimate reminder of impermanence. Fear of death often arises from the illusion of a separate self, one that believes it can achieve immortality through legacy or memory. But when we embrace the truth of interconnectedness, we see that death is not an ending but a continuation. Just as water evaporates into clouds and returns to rivers, so too does energy cycle endlessly through the universe. This understanding brings comfort, allowing us to face mortality with equanimity and gratitude. Incorporating Anatta into daily life doesn't require drastic changes. Small, consistent practices make a big difference over time. Start by setting aside a few minutes each day to reflect on the impermanent nature of your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Notice how labels like happy, sad, or angry come and go, leaving behind the spacious awareness that remains unchanged. Extend this observation to interactions with others, recognizing that everyone you encounter is navigating the same river of change and uncertainty. As you deepen your understanding of Anatta, you'll find that life becomes richer and more vibrant. Challenges lose their sting, replaced by opportunities for growth and insight. Relationships deepen, rooted in mutual respect and empathy. Even ordinary moments take on a luminous quality, infused with the wonder of interconnectedness. You begin to see that letting go of the illusion of self doesn't diminish you, it expands you, revealing the infinite potential that lies beyond the limits of identity. By embracing the truth of Anatta, we unlock a hidden dimension of freedom. We stop fighting against the tide of life and learn to flow with it instead. This surrender isn't passive resignation, it's active participation in the dance of existence guided by wisdom and compassion. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a beautiful mirage shimmering on the horizon of awareness. Chapter 8. Stories of Transformation. Real-life examples of people who found peace through Anatta. The teachings of Anatta, or not-self, are not abstract concepts reserved for philosophers or monks. They are living truths that have transformed countless lives across the globe. In this chapter, we'll explore real-life examples of people who have embraced the insights of Anatta to overcome suffering, find peace, and live with greater authenticity and joy. These stories serve as powerful reminders that the wisdom of Anatta is accessible to everyone, regardless of background, circumstances, or prior experience with mindfulness. By sharing these narratives, I hope to inspire you to see how the principles of Anatta can be applied to your own life, helping you navigate challenges and uncover deeper meaning. Let's begin with the story of Sarah, a corporate executive in her mid-40s who had spent decades climbing the ladder of success. On paper, Sarah seemed to have it all: a high-powered job, financial stability, and a loving family. But beneath the surface, she was struggling. The relentless demands of her career left her exhausted, and the constant pressure to perform eroded her sense of self-worth. She tied her identity to her achievements, believing that her value depended on meeting ever-increasing expectations. When her company underwent restructuring and she was passed over for a promotion, Sarah spiraled into a deep depression. She felt like a failure, questioning whether anything she'd accomplished mattered. It was during this low point that Sarah stumbled upon meditation through a friend's recommendation. At first, she approached it skeptically, viewing it as just another self-help trend. But as she began practicing regularly, something shifted. Through mindfulness meditation, Sarah started noticing the patterns of thought and emotion that had kept her trapped in cycles of stress and self-doubt. She saw how often she identified with labels like successful or inadequate, clinging to them as though they defined her entire existence. Slowly, she began to question these assumptions, recognizing that her worth wasn't tied to external validation. The turning point came when Sarah attended a week-long retreat focused on exploring Anatta. During one session, the teacher invited participants to reflect on the impermanent and interdependent nature of their identities. Sarah realized that her sense of self was not a fixed entity, but a fluid process shaped by countless factors: her upbringing, education, relationships, and even random chance. This insight liberated her from the need to prove herself constantly. Instead of striving for perfection, she learned to embrace imperfection as part of the human experience. Over time, Sarah found a new sense of purpose, not in achieving accolades, but in contributing meaningfully to others' lives. Today, she balances her professional responsibilities with volunteer work, mentoring young women entering the workforce and advocating for workplace wellness initiatives. Next, let's turn to James, a former soldier who served multiple tours in combat zones. After returning home, James struggled with PTSD, haunted by memories of violence and loss. He felt disconnected from his loved ones, unable to relate to their everyday concerns while carrying the weight of his experiences. Therapy helped him manage some symptoms, but he still grappled with feelings of guilt and shame. It wasn't until he discovered Buddhist teachings on Anatta that he began to heal more profoundly. Through meditation and contemplation, James came to see that the trauma he carried wasn't an intrinsic part of him. It was a conditioned response to specific events. By observing his thoughts and emotions without identifying with them, he created space between himself and his pain. He realized that the person he thought he was, the hardened warrior burdened by regret, wasn't fixed or permanent. Just as clouds drift across the sky, so too could his suffering pass if he stopped clinging to it. One particularly transformative moment occurred during a group discussion on emptiness, sunyata, where participants explored the interconnectedness of all beings. For James, this teaching resonated deeply. He saw that his actions, however painful, were part of a larger web of causes and conditions beyond his control. This understanding didn't absolve him of responsibility, but it freed him from the crushing weight of self-blame. With time, James rebuilt his relationships, reconnecting with his family and finding solace in community service. He now volunteers at veterans organizations, sharing his journey and offering support to others navigating similar struggles. Another inspiring example comes from Priya, a young woman in her late 20s who grew up in a strict religious household. As a child, Priya internalized rigid beliefs about morality and sin, which shaped her worldview well into adulthood. She lived in fear of making mistakes, terrified of being judged as unworthy or flawed. This mindset stifled her creativity and prevented her from pursuing her dreams. Despite excelling academically, Priya felt trapped in a life that didn't align with her true passions. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly during a yoga class where the instructor introduced basic mindfulness techniques. Curious, Priya decided to explore meditation further and eventually encountered teachings on Anatta. At first, the idea of not having a fixed self felt unsettling. It challenged everything she believed about identity and morality. But as she practiced observing her thoughts and emotions without attachment, she began to loosen the grip of her conditioning. She saw that the labels she'd assigned herself, good girl, failure, sinner, were constructs, not truths. This realization opened the door to profound transformation. Priya started questioning the rules and expectations that had governed her life, choosing instead to follow her heart. She left her stable but unfulfilling job to pursue a career in art therapy, using creative expression to help others heal. Though the transition was challenging, Priya found courage in knowing that her identity wasn't confined to societal definitions. She embraced uncertainty as part of the journey, trusting that each step would reveal new possibilities. Today, Priya radiates confidence and compassion, inspiring those around her to embrace their authentic selves. Now consider the story of Miguel, a retired school teacher who faced a devastating diagnosis of Parkinson's disease in his early 60s. Initially, Miguel resisted the reality of his condition, clinging to the belief that he could regain control through sheer willpower. But as his symptoms worsened, he became increasingly frustrated and isolated. His sense of self, once rooted in physical strength and independence, crumbled under the weight of his limitations. Miguel's turning point came when a close friend introduced him to loving-kindness meditation, metta. At first, he was skeptical, wondering how sending goodwill to himself and others could possibly make a difference. Yet, as he practiced extending compassion to parts of his body affected by the disease, something remarkable happened. He began to view his illness not as an enemy, but as a teacher, an opportunity to cultivate patience, humility, and gratitude. Through the lens of Anatta, Miguel recognized that his body wasn't a separate entity to fight against. It was part of the same interconnected system that sustained him. Over time, Miguel's attitude toward his condition shifted dramatically. Rather than resisting change, he embraced it. Finding beauty in the small moments of connection and presence, he joined a local support group for individuals with chronic illnesses, sharing his experiences and listening to others' stories. Through these interactions, he discovered a renewed sense of purpose, not despite his limitations, but because of them. Miguel now advocates for accessibility and inclusion, using his voice to raise awareness about the challenges faced by people with disabilities. Finally, let's look at Aisha, a college student grappling with anxiety and perfectionism. From a young age, Aisha excelled academically, earning top grades and accolades. However, this success came at a cost. She pushed herself relentlessly, fearing that any misstep would expose her as a fraud. Her anxiety peaked during her sophomore year when she failed a crucial exam, a rare occurrence that shattered her confidence. Feeling overwhelmed, Aisha sought help from a counselor who recommended mindfulness practices as a way to manage stress. Through meditation, Aisha began to observe the relentless stream of critical thoughts that fueled her anxiety. She noticed how often she attached her worth to outcomes, believing that one failure invalidated all her previous accomplishments. Gradually, she started to challenge these assumptions, reminding herself that her value wasn't contingent on external measures. The concept of anatta resonated deeply with her, offering a fresh perspective on identity and achievement. She saw that her roles, student, daughter, friend, were not fixed identities, but dynamic expressions of her evolving self. With this newfound clarity, Aisha adopted a gentler approach to life. She prioritized balance over perfection, allowing herself to rest and recharge without guilt. She also developed greater empathy for her peers, recognizing that everyone carries invisible burdens. Aisha's transformation extended beyond academics. She became actively involved in campus mental health initiatives, organizing workshops and peer support groups to promote mindfulness and self-compassion. Her leadership inspired many students to seek help and prioritize their well-being. These stories illustrate the diverse ways in which anatta can catalyze personal growth and healing. Whether facing professional setbacks, trauma, cultural conditioning, illness, or academic pressures, these individuals found liberation by letting go of the illusion of a fixed self. Their journeys highlight several key themes, or impermanence. Recognizing that nothing stays the same, including our thoughts, emotions, and circumstances, helps us release attachment to outcomes and identities, interconnectedness. Understanding that we're part of a vast web of relationships fosters compassion, empathy, and a sense of belonging. Non-identification. Observing thoughts and emotions without identifying with them creates distance from suffering, enabling us to respond skillfully rather than react impulsively. Acceptance. Embracing life as it is, not as we wish it to be, cultivates resilience and peace, even in the face of adversity. Purpose beyond self. Letting go of ego-driven concerns opens the door to meaningful contributions to others' lives, enriching both giver and receiver. While each person's path is unique, their transformations share a common foundation, the willingness to question deeply held assumptions about who they are and what matters most. This openness to inquiry is essential for integrating anatta into daily life. It requires courage, patience, and trust, but the rewards are immeasurable. If you're inspired by these stories, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Where do you cling to fixed ideas about yourself? How might embracing impermanence and interconnectedness shift your perspective? Start small, perhaps by setting aside a few minutes each day to practice mindfulness or journal about your experiences. Notice how labels like success, failure, worthy, or unworthy shape your thoughts and behaviors. Challenge these narratives gently, replacing them with curiosity and kindness. Remember, the journey of anatta is not about eliminating the self. It's about seeing it clearly for what it is, a beautiful, ever-changing process that enables us to engage fully with life. By embracing this truth, we unlock boundless freedom, joy, and connection. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a shimmering mirage revealing the infinite potential within us all. Chapter 9. Integrating anatta into relationships and work. The teachings of anatta, or not self, are not confined to solitary meditation practices or philosophical reflection. They have profound implications for how we relate to others and navigate the complexities of daily life. In this chapter, we'll explore how the insights of anatta can transform our relationships and work environments, fostering deeper connection, greater empathy, and more meaningful collaboration. By applying the principles of impermanence, interconnectedness, and non-identification, we can create spaces that honor the humanity of everyone involved, leading to richer, more fulfilling interactions. Let's begin with relationships, which often serve as mirrors reflecting our deepest fears, desires, and attachments. So much conflict arises from the illusion of a separate self, one that seeks validation, control, or security through others. We enter relationships with expectations, believing that they exist to fulfill specific needs: love, companionship, approval, or even identity. When these expectations aren't met, disappointment and resentment follow. But when we embrace the truth of Anatta, we see that relationships are not transactions. They're opportunities for growth, learning, and mutual support. Consider romantic partnerships where the stakes feel particularly high. Many couples struggle with communication breakdowns, power struggles, or feelings of neglect. These challenges often stem from clinging to rigid roles or identities within the relationship. For example, one partner might identify as the provider, while the other sees themselves as the caregiver. While such labels may seem helpful at first, they quickly become limiting, reducing complex individuals to narrow stereotypes. Through the lens of Anatta, we recognize that these roles are fluid, shaped by circumstances rather than inherent traits. Imagine a couple arguing about household responsibilities. One partner feels overwhelmed by the workload, while the other feels unappreciated for their efforts. Through the lens of Anatta, they might realize that their roles, breadwinner, caregiver, homemaker, are not fixed identities, but flexible arrangements designed to meet shared goals. By stepping back from ego-driven narratives, they can collaborate more effectively, finding solutions that honor each other's contributions without reinforcing rigid boundaries between you and me. This shift fosters a sense of teamwork, reminding both partners that they're on the same side, navigating life's challenges together. Parenting is another area where Anatta offers transformative insights. Raising children often triggers deep-seated fears about identity and legacy. Parents may worry about whether they're doing enough, whether their kids will succeed, or whether they'll be judged by others. These anxieties stem from attachment to a fixed identity, one that seeks immortality through offspring. But when parents embrace the truth of Anatta, they let go of the need to control outcomes. They recognize that their children are autonomous beings on their own journeys, shaped by forces far beyond parental influence. This realization allows them to parent with greater presence and love, supporting their children's growth without imposing unrealistic expectations. For instance, imagine a parent struggling with their teenager's rebellious phase. From the perspective of Anatta, they might see this behavior not as a personal attack, but as a natural expression of the child's evolving self. Instead of reacting defensively, they can approach the situation with curiosity and compassion, asking themselves, what fears or insecurities might be driving this reaction? How can I respond in a way that honors both of our humanity? This mindset diffuses tension, creating space for dialogue and understanding. Friendships also benefit greatly from the insights of Anatta. So often, friendships falter because of unmet expectations or perceived slights. We expect our friends to always be available to agree with us or to validate our choices. When they don't, we feel hurt or betrayed. But when we recognize that friendships are dynamic processes, not static entities, we can approach them with greater flexibility and grace. Take the example of two friends who drift apart due to differing life paths. One moves away for a new job, while the other stays behind. Initially, they may feel abandoned or guilty, clinging to memories of what their friendship once was. Through the lens of Anatta, however, they can see that change is inevitable and not necessarily negative. Their bond remains real, even if its form shifts over time. By embracing impermanence, they can cherish the moments they've shared while remaining open to new possibilities for connection. Now let's turn to the workplace, where the principles of Anatta can revolutionize dynamics and productivity. Modern organizations often operate under assumptions of hierarchy, competition, and individual achievement. Employees are encouraged to prove their worth through performance metrics, promotions, and accolades. While these incentives can motivate short-term results, they often undermine long-term well-being and collaboration. The pressure to succeed creates stress, burnout, and disconnection among team members. Through the lens of Anatta, we see that success isn't an individual endeavor. It's a collective process, shaped by countless factors. No single person achieves anything alone. Every accomplishment depends on the contributions of others, whether visible or invisible. Recognizing this interdependence fosters a culture of gratitude, trust, and mutual respect. Leaders who embody the principles of Anatta prioritize teamwork over competition, emphasizing shared goals rather than personal glory. For example, consider a manager struggling to resolve conflicts within her team. Tensions run high as employees vie for recognition, blaming each other for missed deadlines or poor outcomes. Through the lens of Anatta, the manager might facilitate a discussion about the interconnected nature of their work. She could highlight how each role contributes to the organization's mission, encouraging team members to view themselves as part of a larger whole. This reframing reduces defensiveness, promoting cooperation and innovation. Over time, the team develops a stronger sense of camaraderie, seeing challenges as opportunities to grow together rather than threats to individual status. Creativity thrives in environments informed by Anatta. When individuals let go of the need to prove themselves, they tap into a boundless reservoir of inspiration. Ideas flow freely, unencumbered by fear of judgment or failure. Collaboration becomes effortless as team members trust one another's intentions and expertise. Even disagreements take on a constructive tone, viewed not as personal attacks but as opportunities for refinement and improvement. Take the case of a design firm tasked with developing a groundbreaking product. Initially, team members clash over competing visions, each determined to assert their authority. Deadlines loom, tensions rise, and progress stalls. It's only when the project leader introduces mindfulness exercises and reflections on Anatta that the group begins to shift. By observing their thoughts and emotions without attachment, team members loosen their grip on fixed ideas, opening up space for creative synergy. They realize that their individual egos aren't obstacles to overcome, they're resources to harness. Together, they co-create something truly innovative, exceeding client expectations and earning widespread acclaim. Conflict resolution is another area where Anatta proves invaluable. Whether it's a disagreement between colleagues, a strained partnership, or a family feud, the illusion of a separate self often fuels hostility. We say things like, "You never listened to me," or "You hurt my feelings," as though the other person exists solely to meet our expectations. But when we recognize that both parties are fluid, ever-changing processes shaped by countless factors, these conflicts lose their intensity. Instead of reacting defensively, we can approach disagreements with curiosity and compassion, asking ourselves, what fears or insecurities might be driving this reaction? How can I respond in a way that honors both of our humanity? For instance, imagine a workplace dispute over resource allocation. Two departments argue over funding priorities, each convinced that their needs outweigh the others. Through the lens of Anatta, mediators might guide participants to reflect on the impermanent and interdependent nature of their roles. They could emphasize how decisions impact the organization as a whole, encouraging stakeholders to adopt a broader perspective. This reframing dissolves resistance, paving the way for compromise and alignment. Leadership itself transforms through the insights of Anatta. Traditional models of leadership often emphasize authority, decisiveness, and charisma. While these qualities have merit, they risk alienating those who don't fit the mold. Leaders grounded in Anatta cultivate humility, vulnerability, and inclusivity. They see themselves not as isolated figures at the top of a pyramid, but as facilitators of collective potential. By modeling openness and authenticity, they inspire trust and loyalty, empowering others to step into their own leadership capacities. Consider the story of a CEO facing a crisis of confidence after a failed product launch. Public criticism and internal dissent threatened to derail his tenure. Rather than doubling down on defensive posturing, he turns inward, exploring the teachings of Anatta. He realizes that his identity isn't tied to titles or achievements, it's rooted in service to others. With renewed clarity, he convenes town halls, inviting feedback and fostering transparency. He acknowledges mistakes openly, taking responsibility without deflecting blame. This act of vulnerability rebuilds morale, rekindling faith in his vision and reigniting passion across the organization. Finally, let's examine how Anatta applies to career transitions, a common source of anxiety and uncertainty. Whether it's switching industries, starting a business, or retiring, major changes often provoke fear of loss or inadequacy. Through the lens of Anatta, we see that careers are not fixed trajectories, but evolving expressions of our values and passions. There's no permanent self being left behind. There's simply a continuous unfolding of possibilities. By letting go of attachment to old identities, we open ourselves up to new experiences, fostering resilience and creativity. Take the example of Maria, a seasoned accountant contemplating a move into art therapy. For years, she suppressed her artistic inclinations, believing they were impractical compared to her stable profession. But as she explored mindfulness and Anatta, she began to question these assumptions. She saw that her skills in analysis and organization could complement her artistic aspirations, creating a unique niche in the field. Though the transition was challenging, Maria found courage in knowing that her identity wasn't confined to societal definitions. She embraced uncertainty as part of the journey, trusting that each step would reveal new possibilities. Today, Maria runs a thriving practice, helping clients heal through creative expression. These examples demonstrate the versatility of Anatta in transforming relationships and work environments. Whether navigating romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, team dynamics, leadership, or career transitions, the principles of impermanence, interconnectedness, and non-identification offer practical tools for growth and healing. By embracing these truths, we unlock boundless freedom, joy, and connection. And in doing so, we discover that the self we thought we needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a shimmering mirage, revealing the infinite potential within us all. Chapter 10. Advanced Practices for Deepening Insight. The journey of exploring Anatta or not-self is one that deepens over time. While foundational practices like mindfulness meditation and observing the 5 aggregates provide invaluable insights, there are advanced techniques designed to take your understanding to new levels. These practices invite you to delve deeper into the nature of awareness itself, cultivating clarity, equanimity, and profound liberation. In this chapter, we'll explore several advanced methods for integrating Anatta into your spiritual path, offering guidance on how to approach them with patience, curiosity, and dedication. Let's begin with open awareness meditation, a powerful practice that builds upon the foundation of focused attention. Open awareness meditation involves resting in pure awareness without anchoring your attention to any specific object, such as the breath or bodily sensations. Instead, you allow your mind to expand, embracing whatever arises, thoughts, emotions, sounds, physical sensations, without clinging to or rejecting anything. This state of spacious receptivity reveals the boundless nature of consciousness, dissolving the illusion of separation between self and other. To practice open awareness meditation, find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably, either cross-legged on the floor or in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or soften your gaze. Take a few deep breaths to settle into the present moment, then let go of any deliberate focus. Allow your awareness to rest in its natural state, wide and unobstructed, like an empty sky. As thoughts, emotions, or sensations arise, simply notice them without engaging. Don't label them as good or bad. Instead, view them as passing phenomena within the vast expanse of awareness. Over time, this practice cultivates a sense of non-duality, the recognition that subject and object, perceiver and perceived, are not fundamentally separate. You begin to see that awareness itself is the true essence of experience, unchanging amidst the flux of phenomena. This insight undermines the illusion of a fixed self, revealing that what you call you is nothing more than a temporary configuration within the infinite field of consciousness. Another advanced technique is noting meditation, which combines mindfulness with precise observation. In noting meditation, you mentally label each experience as it arises, for example, thinking, feeling, hearing, or seeing. The act of labeling helps you recognize the transient nature of phenomena, reinforcing the teaching of impermanence central to Anatta. By naming experiences rather than identifying with them, you create distance from habitual patterns of attachment and aversion. For instance, imagine sitting quietly and noticing a wave of anxiety rising in your chest. Instead of getting swept away by the emotion, you might silently note anxiety. Then, as the sensation shifts or fades, you continue to observe it without judgment. This simple yet potent practice trains the mind to remain steady and impartial, even in the face of intense emotions. Over time, you develop greater emotional agility, able to respond to life's challenges with wisdom and compassion. Noting meditation can also be applied to interpersonal dynamics. During conversations, for example, you might notice yourself reacting defensively to criticism. Instead of immediately countering the comment, you could pause and internally note defensiveness. This brief moment of awareness creates space to choose a skillful response rather than react impulsively. By observing your reactions without identification, you loosen the grip of ego-driven narratives, fostering deeper connection and understanding in relationships. A third advanced practice is contemplative inquiry, which involves reflecting deeply on existential questions related to Anatta. Unlike analytical thinking, which seeks definitive answers, contemplative inquiry invites you to sit with uncertainty and ambiguity, allowing insights to emerge organically. For example, you might ask yourself, who am I beyond my roles and identities? What remains when all labels dissolve? Is there a boundary between self and other, or do they seamlessly merge? To engage in contemplative inquiry, set aside dedicated time for reflection, ideally in a peaceful environment free from distractions. Pose your question gently, then release any effort to find an answer. Simply hold the inquiry in your awareness, trusting that clarity will arise naturally. You might journal about your reflections, capturing fleeting insights before they fade. Or you could discuss your findings with trusted friends or teachers, deepening your understanding through dialogue. Contemplative inquiry often leads to moments of profound realization. For instance, someone pondering the question, who am I, might suddenly perceive the absence of a fixed core within themselves. They see that their identity is fluid, composed of countless interdependent factors rather than a singular essence. This insight isn't intellectual, it's visceral. A direct experience of emptiness and interconnectedness that transcends words. Visualization practices offer another avenue for deepening insight into Anatta. One effective visualization involves imagining yourself as a river, constantly flowing and changing. Picture the water coursing through rocks, branches and bends, adapting effortlessly to obstacles along the way. Notice how the river never stays the same. It's always moving forward, shaped by conditions, yet inherently free. Now extend this imagery to encompass others around you. See them too as rivers, merging and diverging, influencing and being influenced by the currents of life. This visualization reinforces the truth of impermanence and interconnectedness, dissolving the illusion of separateness. It reminds you that just as rivers carve new paths as they flow, so too does life reshape itself in response to changing circumstances. This understanding fosters acceptance, resilience, and trust in the natural unfolding of existence. Body-centered practices like yoga or qigong complement the teachings of Anatta by grounding awareness in the physical form. These disciplines emphasize the unity of body, mind, and spirit, highlighting the interplay between movement, breath, and intention. Through sustained practice, you develop heightened sensitivity to subtle energies within and around you, recognizing that your body is not a static entity, but a dynamic system interacting with countless forces. For example, during a yoga session, you might focus on the sensation of stretching a muscle. As you breathe into the stretch, notice how tension releases gradually, revealing layers of sensation beneath the surface. This process mirrors the unfolding of awareness in meditation. You peel back layers of conditioning to uncover the raw, unfiltered experience of being alive. Similarly, in qigong, you cultivate energy flow, qi, through gentle movements and breath work, harmonizing your internal rhythms with the larger cycles of nature. Both yoga and qigong encourage non-identification with the body, seeing it as a vehicle for experiencing life rather than an object to control or perfect. This perspective aligns closely with the teachings of Anatta, reminding you that the body is part of a vast web of relationships. When practiced regularly, these disciplines enhance flexibility, balance, and vitality, supporting overall well-being while deepening your understanding of interconnectedness. Dream work and lucid dreaming represent another frontier for exploring Anatta. Dreams provide a unique opportunity to examine the fluidity of self, as identities and scenarios shift rapidly without logical constraints. By paying attention to dreams, you gain insight into unconscious patterns and beliefs that shape waking life. Lucid dreaming, becoming aware that you're dreaming while still immersed in the dream state, takes this exploration further, enabling you to interact consciously with dream content. To incorporate dream work into your practice, keep a journal by your bedside and record dreams immediately upon waking. Look for recurring themes or symbols that reflect aspects of your psyche. Ask yourself, how do I define myself differently in dreams compared to waking life? What fears or desires emerge unconsciously? Over time, you may notice parallels between dream experiences and waking reality, reinforcing the insight that identity is constructed rather than inherent. Lucid dreaming amplifies this investigation by granting agency within the dream world. Imagine realizing mid-dream that you're not bound by physical laws. You can fly, transform objects, or communicate telepathically. These experiences challenge conventional notions of limitation, expanding your sense of possibility. They also highlight the malleable nature of self, demonstrating that identity is context-dependent rather than fixed. Finally, ethical living serves as both a practice and a fruit of deepening insight into Anatta. As you come to see yourself as part of an interconnected whole, your actions naturally align with values of compassion, generosity, and stewardship. Ethical living isn't about adhering to rigid rules, it's about responding skillfully to the needs of others and the planet, guided by wisdom and empathy. Consider how this plays out in daily life. Someone committed to ethical living might prioritize sustainability, reducing waste, and supporting eco-friendly businesses. They might advocate for social justice, challenging systems of oppression, and fostering inclusivity. Or they might dedicate time to service, volunteering at shelters, mentoring youth, or caring for elders. Each action reflects an understanding that harming others ultimately harms oneself, while benefiting others contributes to collective flourishing. Ethical living extends beyond outward behavior to encompass inner attitudes. For example, practicing forgiveness, not only toward others but also toward yourself, dissolves resentment and guilt, freeing you from the weight of past grievances. Cultivating gratitude shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance, nurturing joy and contentment. And embracing humility acknowledges the limits of individual knowledge, opening the door to lifelong learning and growth. Ultimately, advanced practices for deepening insight into Anatta aren't about achieving some final destination, they're about continually refining your relationship with reality, whether through open awareness meditation, noting meditation, contemplative inquiry, visualization, body-centered disciplines, dream work, or ethical living. Each method offers tools for dismantling the illusion of self and awakening to the boundless freedom of interconnectedness. As you integrate these practices into your life, remember to approach them with kindness and patience. Transformation takes time and setbacks are inevitable. Trust the process and trust yourself. With consistent effort, you'll discover that the journey of Anatta is not about losing something precious. It's about gaining everything meaningful. It's about stepping out of the confines of ego and into the vast, luminous expanse of being. And in doing so, you'll find that the self you thought you needed to protect was never really there to begin with. It was just a shimmering mirage, revealing the infinite potential within us all. As we come to the close of this exploration into Anatta, the profound teaching of not-self, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me on this journey. Whether you're new to mindfulness or someone who's been practicing for years, I hope this video has offered insights and tools that resonate with your own path of growth and discovery. Throughout these chapters, we've delved deeply into the nature of self, or rather, the absence of a fixed, independent self. We've seen how clinging to the illusion of self creates suffering, while letting go opens us to boundless freedom, compassion, and connection. From meditation practices to everyday applications, from stories of transformation to advanced techniques for deepening insight, each step has been an invitation to question assumptions, embrace impermanence, and awaken to the truth of interconnectedness. Remember, the teachings of Anatta aren't meant to leave you feeling empty or lost. On the contrary, they reveal the fullness of life, the vibrant, ever-changing tapestry of experience that unfolds moment by moment. By releasing the need to hold on to a rigid sense of identity, you open yourself to infinite possibilities. You begin to see that you're not separate from the world around you. You're an integral part of it, woven into its fabric in ways both visible and unseen. This realization changes everything. It transforms how you relate to yourself with kindness, curiosity, and acceptance. It reshapes your relationships, fostering deeper empathy and understanding. It redefines success, shifting focus from external validation to inner fulfillment. And it guides you toward a life lived with purpose, authenticity, and joy. But let's be honest, embracing Anatta isn't always easy. It requires courage to confront long-held beliefs about who you are and what matters most. It demands patience as you navigate moments of doubt or discomfort. And it calls for trust, not in some external authority, but in your own capacity to adapt, grow, and thrive. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's the reminder that you already possess everything you need to walk this path. The wisdom of Anatta isn't something outside of you. It's a reflection of your true nature, waiting to be uncovered. As you move forward, I encourage you to bring the principles of Anatta into your daily life. Start small, perhaps by setting aside a few minutes each day to practice mindfulness or journal about your experiences. Notice how labels like happy, sad, or angry come and go, leaving behind the spacious awareness that remains unchanged. Extend this observation to interactions with others, recognizing that everyone you encounter is navigating the same river of change and uncertainty. And don't forget to celebrate the progress you make along the way. Growth is rarely linear, and every step counts, whether it's choosing kindness over judgment, embracing imperfection over perfection, or simply pausing to breathe amidst chaos. These small acts ripple outward, touching lives far beyond your own. Before we part ways, I'd like to leave you with a final thought. Life is fleeting, unpredictable, and achingly beautiful. By embracing the truth of Anatta, you learn to savor each moment without clinging to it. Trusting in the natural flow of existence, you discover that letting go doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding yourself in everything. Thank you once again for being here, for showing up, for listening, and for daring to explore the depths of your own being. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the Mindful Zone for more content on mindfulness, well-being, and personal transformation. Until next time, may you walk lightly and live fully. With warmth and gratitude, I'll see you soon. Namaste.